Hey Dylan.
Hey, Mike.
Dylan, you remember last week when I told you that Sunburn had gone gold?
Yes.
Do you remember what else I told you?
There was going to be a framework release and a some news about Metro coming soon.
Um,
Did I get anything in there?
yeah. In fact, I should have checked up on the Metro News. I didn't check up on the Metro News. But the Framework Edition, how much does the Framework Edition cost?
It is free.
It is free. I don't think we hammered this home last week we hammered this. Sunburn Framework is free. If you just want to try Sunburn, you download the Sunburn Framework, not the Sunburn Engine. The Sunburn Engine is different from the framework. The main difference is going to be like the in-game editor and things like that. But you can use a lot of the lighting and features and just kick the tires, and it's updated to 2.0. So for the longest time, the framework lagged behind the engine, and that's, I guess, because we didn't realize it wasn't gold yet. But when it went gold, the framework was also updated at the same time. And I can't stress this enough. We talk about the Sunburn engine all the time. We talk about using Sunburn all the time. And one of the big things that we hear back is, hey, I'd love to check out the Sunburn engine, but I just can't, download and try it. Now, that said, okay, so, like, you go in here, and it's, what are you getting? You're getting all the dynamic lighting, diffuse, bump map, scalar mapping. You're getting the full physics system, primitive and mesh collisions. So you're getting collision detection. You get collision events that you can wire up, and so you can handle collisions in different ways. You can also wire in some custom collision handling. So if you're going to let the framework handle the base raw dirty, but then you're going to get in there and do the fine, like, hey, let me know when it's in proximity, but I'll let you know based on the rules of my game, whatever. You've got a bunch of audio. You've got the full audio run, actually. You've got location-based 3D emitters, ambient sounds, basically non-3D, continuous single-shot effects, 3D Doppler effect is available. The framework one's on Windows. You're not going to deploy it to the 360. But, like, when you're ready to jump in, if you're doing Xbox Live Indie games, right? Then you get the Indie Edition for $150. $150. Now, what do you got to pay? You got to pay $99 to join the App Hub, right?
Right.
So that's like $50 more than it is to join the App Hub. Actually, probably the same because you want to probably have gold, right? So you have the gold membership so that you can do multiplayer testing, and the App Hub membership. That's $150. Costs as much as that does. So you shell that out. I know some of you are broke college students, but fucking go flip some burgers, all right? Hustle some cards, deal some smack. I don't care. It should not be hard to come up with $150. That is not a lot to ask for. Now, the cool thing is like, all right, so the Indie Edition, core features, $150. You get to deploy to Xbox, you get to deploy to the Windows Phone for however long that thing's around. You get the Sunburn editors. You get the in-game editor. You get to hit the magic F11 key, F12 key.
We need to look this up.
We do need to look that up. But you hit the magic F key.
During these ads.
You say Deus Machinima F, and it, like, comes up, right? Like Raven. What is Raven in Teen Titans? Like, Zinthos, Metreon, whatever. You didn't watch Teen Titans, did you?
It's been a long time.
Okay.
It's been a long time.
So you call the enchantment, and you pull it up, and you get the...
Enchantment?
You get the enchantment. There you go. It's like the retard
enchantment
in Dragon Age. It's just like enchantment, right?
Oh my God.
So you get all of that. But let's say you need a little more.
We're going to say something offensive in every ad.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, like, we're going to say something offensive. And right now, I'm broadcasting right now. Good night. Yeah, so great. Daughter just trashed the Sunburn ad. Sorry, sponsors. So let's say you're ready. You need a little more things, right? You need all the features. You need all the things, right?
All the things.
All the things. You're not. Screw this Indie Edition. I need it. I want it all. I want it all right now, right? Pro Edition is $300. So, I believe you could probably talk to him about an upgrade from Indie to Pro. I mean, I don't see anything on their website, but they're hip dudes. Maybe they'll cut you in, that you could do an upgrade. But if you're a member of the App Hub and you just want to, like dive in, it's $250. So it's $100 more than the Indie Edition. So like if you're going for the 150, right? And you've been selling smack in the back alleys and doing some unsavory things,
I think you're minimizing how horrible this is.
A couple more grams, a few more hand jobs, whatever you're doing, and you're at the pro level. I mean, this is affordable. This is within the budget range. You can stretch it out. You can put in the hours, put in the effort.
As 30-something business developers, I think we've lost touch with the college hacker demographic.
I don't know, man. I didn't have real college. I went to the Air Force and then took all my college to community college, the Air Force, and on-base colleges. So I don't know what real college is like.
And if you did,
that's what I imagine it's like. You guys are all just like giving hand jobs and selling smack and doing blow. I don't know. Granted, a lot of those things go on in the military too, but don't ask, don't tell. And so I can't talk about that. I think you can ask and can tell now. I think that's changed, actually. But not in my military. In my military, we did not ask and we did not tell, damn it.
And considering all the things you just listed, the things you don't ask about are probably drugs and
Yes. Yeah. Yes. My military being the Clinton-era military. That's how strict we were.
Congratulations. I think we've packed the required number of controversial and or offensive statements
Metreon
into this
Zenthos.
ad.
Jim knew Azrion Metreon Zenthos. I bet you Jim didn't have to look that up either. You're a fucking nerd. But our people. So that's it. There's also a $1,000 edition, and basically the $1,000 edition is the same as the Pro. It's a licensing thing, okay? So if EA comes in and they back your game, you got a publisher, then you need to pay the $1,000, edition. So, you can talk to them, if you feel like you're broaching that, and I'll let you know. I think I did discuss that, but that's like way off. And at the point that you're doing that, you're getting like huge, big publishing contracts and all that. $1,000 for the framework is nothing. So, that is, a rundown of your options. Like I said, 2.0 just went gold, lots of new features, framework is free, go check it out. You can learn more at synapsegaming.com. Alright everyone, welcome to the show. I should add to our ad. I should disclose that, we may be back on ourselves using it. So, long story short, we evaluated it, and we were looking at it, and I was ready to, jump on Sunburn Gaming Engine. And I sent John, Bob the C Builder, a lot of emails, back and forth. And where we ended up was, the sponsoring the podcast and all that came out of it. But we thought we were going to go into it using it a lot. Okay?
We thought we were going to do big 3D games.
We did. And
not
then
necessarily big 3D games, but 3D games.
The Autodesk Soft Image mod tool, basically pulled from Creators Club. There's no real good 3D option for indie. We tried to make Blender work, and then I just kind of got nervous of man, we're biting off a lot. We need to slim it down. We need to do some 2D stuff and work on solid game core mechanics, ship a few more games. Let's leave 3D on the shelf. And unfortunately that meant we weren't doing a lot of Sunburn because, XNA really does a lot for 2D. I mean, it really simplifies the 2D world.
And you don't need a whole lot.
No, you don't need a whole lot. I experimented around with connecting the Sunburn Gaming Engine to Tiled, and got some successful tests up to make sure that, that would work. And it did. We were able to get that up. I think you can find my posts on that actually still on the forums. And Smiler is asking, is it going to be adapted to write Win 8 Metro games? If that's not out already, that's going to be out in the next week or so, according to my sources. Like that's shipping. The Win 8 Metro, and that ties into why I'm bringing it back up. We're going to look back into it. So we did some tests of wiring up 2D to the Sunburn engine, and it kind of worked, but it's not like you really need it. We talked about, you know, using some particle effects and some lighting and doing some tricks with it, but for the most part, at the time, there wasn't a whole lot gained. Now they've added collision detection and physics engines. They got audio processing that we might look into. So there's a lot more happening that would be wins for us. Of like, yeah, okay, you know, let's check out all of this stuff. And the reason we're diving back into it is not just the new features, but the direction these guys have been moving. All signs are pointing to Sunburn is going to be disconnected from XNA and is going to compile natively or go through steps to get to run to other operating systems. Okay, mostly iOS and all that. So, you know, I think the low-hanging fruit, of course, is the Win 8 Metro type stuff that's similar platform. But I feel like we're going to have an announcement one day on the podcast where I'm saying, like, it's on iOS, bitches, right? And I think we could start moving that direction and get on that platforming, but get this kind of stay in the XNA that we know and love. Now, I got to disclaim, like, this is not the official ad anymore. This is the podcast, so this is not bankable information. This is us speculating that right now, as XNA developers, you kind of have Monogame out there. You could go Sharp DX if you wanted. You can go look into Unity. It's still C# on the back end. We've kind of, you know, touched our fingers into all of these. But man, XNA is just fucking awesome, and just want to stay in XNA from a developer standpoint. And the idea that Sunburn is going to have some kind of solution for us, Synapse Gaming is going to have some kind of solution where we're just porting over our XNA project and they're running it. And it's, you know, Monogame is good. Nothing wrong with Monogame, but you still kind of have like, okay, well, it's kind of this community effort, and you kind of patch up your own things, and you tweak your own things, and you get your game running. And it has been used to ship games, and it has been used to port games, has been successful on that. The idea of, hey, here's a company behind it, and they're also, you know, got adding things to it beyond just source compatibility with their engine and all that. We're gonna take a look and a run at like getting maybe Captain Dubstep running on it. What also coincides with the move is that we have to write the tiled lib engine, basically. Yeah. Like we kind of got to. Nick did a great little tiled lib engine, and I've complained about it before, but it gets you up and running, and it's pretty quick if you're using tiled map editor. But it's kind of hardwired to work this one specific way. It's caused a lot of issues where you have to work a lot of extra code, a lot of places to work around the way it's meant to work for our game. And I've kind of been saying, like, I want to rewrite this thing, and I want to make it a little bit more generic to where it's not tightly coupled to Sprite Batch as it is now, so that we could use the Sprite container of Sunburn. So it's like, since we want to kind of rewrite this anyway, and it all kind of makes sense, it might mean we end up shipping Draco Wing before we ship Captain Dubstep, because Captain Dubstep's down to a point where there's a lot of code complete happening, except for like boss encounters and special stuff.
And the difficulty too is we've also got Spriter to consider.
We also have Spriter in there,
stuff to
working for us as well. So that's kind of an unknown as well. What we could tease out of it to do if we switch to Sunburn. But if we go down this route and we rewrite one, then we'll kind of see where we're at without jeopardizing, and we do it and use Draco Wing as the test game, and then depending on how it goes and where that's at, because that's a much smaller in scope game. It's really just kind of an arcade game, just a shooter, and you know, just throw it up on live, and whatever it does, it does. It's not a big deal, not putting a lot of effort into that. But it'll be something that we can ship and all that. So, we'll probably, if we do this, update our Funkworks game library or whatever. If we end up having a tiled lib rewrite or something like that, it'll be out there. We we are kind of committed to going ahead and open source any sort of middleware, not the game, right? But like any sort of middleware we end up creating for ourselves, if it's we did it right, it should be cleanly extractable, so we can use it in other games, and we'll move it over.
I don't know. I was gonna say, like, a lot of the code I've done for Spriter, I did some code just this week where I was getting the overlays working, and man, I don't know how to use that information.
Now, does Spriter call the Spriter XNA piece? Does it call Sprite Batch directly, or do you still call that? You just get the images because you're doing some image on the substitution fly there changes.
You do, and that's why I kind of think, like, I don't know how much
you do. What you call Sprite Batch directly?
Yeah, you call Sprite Batch draw directly.
So basically, you're using a Spriter to get the data, which images, what positions, and then you call Sprite Batch with that.
And then there's some.
You'll have no problem on Sunburn, because Sunburn has this thing called Sprite Container that's pretty close to the same thing, with the exception of Sunburn is doing some caching, so it's not like doing like clear and repaint the whole thing cornflower blue each frame. It's actually not changing things that don't need to be changed or something, I think. So you kind of like pre-register some of the assets and then just kind of place them on there a little bit. I don't know. It's been a bit since I've got into it, but it doesn't have the problem, like the problem with TiledLib is that you call map.draw.
Yeah. And
pass it Sprite Batch and it does the right thing. It's like, well, I can't just call it and give it any object. It has to be a Sprite Batch. So I can't give it a Sprite container and have it do
Does Sprite container use like draw string? Like it's got comparable methods to everything, right?
Yeah.
It's almost the type of thing if we make a library, we have like an I Sprite
drawable,
whatever that we pass in, and you can either have an implementation for Sprite Batch, Sprite Container,
or whatever you need.
Whatever.
Yeah, like we could ship 2 implementations for these things, and if somebody has a third framework that they're using, and they want to take over and do that, then yeah. So, I also want to mention, we'll segue a little bit to my week here. This is a Raspberry Pi.
Extremely proud of this little Raspberry Pi.
Do you know how long I've been fucking waiting for this thing? I ordered this thing in February. This little badass is a whole fucking computer on the size of about a credit card. And it's got an HDMI out. It's got a composite out as well. 2 USB ports, network port, 100 base. I believe. I don't think it's gigabit. That doesn't seem to be written on the board. Probably gonna look up the specs. I think this is a little ARM processor on here. It's a Samsung something. I don't know. But, yeah, so this is basically, some of your mobile processors made out into a PC board. University of Cambridge, they formed a nonprofit group to basically, like, for these iPhones, these computers in our pocket, that's cool and all, but that's not accessible hardware to the hackers, who just want to build little things. So they're like, how cheap and how small can we get this stuff? And then just send it out to people and what they do with it. So I'm going to turn this thing into a little Python gaming console. I'm going to write some GUI code to launch your games, sort of like a little marketplace thing. Ideally, I'd like for it to connect to the cloud so you could upload and download games as you make them. And it's for the Technology Cooperative, the nonprofit charity that we're involved with, that outreach to kids and get them exposure to technology. And ideally this ends in like a 1 or 2 week summer camp where the kids come in and they get their Raspberry Pi on day 1 and they load up the OS and the system, they get that installed, they go to the 3D printer and they print their case and they design their case, and then the rest of the class we give them an introduction to game programming with Python, and then they run the game on the console, and then at the end of the week, and then, of course, they take it all home with them, and they've got it to further play around with, and all that. So, the cool thing is that Mad Ninjas is mentioning where I was going with this. Monogame are on the Raspberry Pi forums, and they got Monogame running up on there, so you could do your XNA. You could do several. There's a lot of resources with Python. The reason for doing Python is if you've never programmed before, it's a great language to start with. It's a great language because it's not a teaching language, so it's not hindrance. You can pretty much do anything you need to. It reads tiled. Like I've already got tiled maps uploaded in Python with Pygame. It's pretty damn performant, makes OpenGL calls and all that with the right stuff and all that. But, like, if you're new to, like, for loops and if statements and all that, it's pretty gentle on that stuff. And, it's not strongly typed and you can definitely move from Python into XNA very easily because Pygame really kind of sets you up in the same kind of draw update cycle. Although it's not as explicit. Like, you don't have, like, a class that you inherit that has an explicit draw and update methods. You actually just create a while loop for your game, like, from the main loop. And then from that, you kind of segment off, like, this will be my update part, and this will be my draw calls down here, and then I'll call this method to wait until we go 30 frames a second before we go back up. So it's a little bit more raw in the sense that XNA hides a little of those details from you. And you can adjust them with, like, fixed time step or whatever flags. But that's that. The other part of my week, I wanted to talk about this book, this show. I want to talk about this episode. So 4th of July, I start going down what's known as the Monomyth. Okay? Have you heard this before? Are you familiar with the idea of the Monomyth or the
who was it? Extra Credits did a video on that. Yeah.
That's what it started from. I watched the Extra Credits thing, and I was like, I'm kind of curious to go down. So then after Extra Credits, I read like 4 or 5 articles talking about it. I watched like 5 or 6 more YouTube videos breaking it down. But it got to the point where like I would go in and like Extra Credits, I think, gave you like 6 or 7 points that they kind of outlined or something.
Yeah.
Other videos had 10, some had 14, some had 12, and I'm like, okay, this is clearly like interpreted and reinterpreted and redone, and some think these are important, and some think these two are the same point and all that. And I got to the point where it's like, okay, they called out the book, Joseph Campbell's A Hero with 1,000 Faces, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, and since we're mirroring, that's coming out awesome. That is coming out great. So hold the podcast up to your mirror if you're watching the video to be able to read that book. It's really just open to like some page, get some text on there. Oh, that's too small. I ain't gonna come out.
Yes, blink.
But so yeah, I was gonna talk about this book. And like read up on this a little bit. Like obviously I wouldn't be through with it by,
right.
2 days, but I was just hyped up. I was like reading all this stuff and kind of like, yes, there's gonna be a lecture, there's gonna be a talk by me at some point on applying the Monomyth to your game, because I was kind of like, I understand where people complain about Hollywood and stories because it's been done to death, it's been done 1,000 times, and it's like we all know it, but we all love it, right? Like Harry Potter, it's the Monomyth, right? And it's like we all still fucking love it. Right? So it's crazy popular. And I think I understand with the Hollywood because, like, okay, this is very predictable. But when you go to a game, the idea of a loose story with the major beats that feel good, feel right, because we're used to them, is kind of what you want to allow the player to immerse themselves in the character and fill out the edges you didn't. Like if you just give them the base story beats, you kind of leave them room to fill out the minor details in their head, and I think that creates a relatable game. It's like all of a sudden it's like, yeah, that's my Mass Effect, okay? I want to talk about this book, but unfortunately I'm not talking about this book. This talk is a tribute. This isn't the actual discussion of the book, this is a tribute to the book. No, because I didn't get it till today.
It arrived today.
Yeah, it arrived today, because I went on and I was like, alright, this book is taught in college, okay? It's surely in our McKay's is our used bookstore. Surely they have it. But knowing that this book breaks down everything from like Gilgamesh to the Bible to, you know,
Like, where would you find
Lord
it
of the
in
Rings. Yes. Where is this book at?
Yes. That's...
You know, is it fucking lit? Is it literature? You know, is it Western literature? Is it Eastern literature? You know, like they have so many stupid categories over at our used bookstore. Is it theology? Is it mythology? Is it religious studies? All of these are separate categories at McKay's. You know, and you know,
I've got a number of books on my Amazon wish list that are like that. That every time I go in, it's like, I'm not even gonna look.
I can't find
I don't
them.
know where I'll go.
And you know what? If the fuckers would just have a computer up front, if they
Yes.
have a computer, they have a database. Because when you go in there and drop used books off, they basically scan them in and goes like, yeah, we got 12 copies. These things don't sell. Oh, fuck yeah, here's your book back, right? So they have that stuff. And you know what? Fine if it's only updated once a week or whatever. It's like, yes,
we
this
maybe
book
have this.
exists. The place is warehouse-sized.
I know they can look it up themselves because I've had one or two of them do this for me.
Yes.
This is one of those times where you're like, I want this book. I will buy it for more than it's worth.
And
if you will
can
just
go ask them,
give it to me
and
now.
they will tell you what section it belongs in, and but you have to, like, they're all at the checkout lane. There's not people just wandering around. I can look that up for you, and
That's a good thing.
yeah.
Last thing I want to do is, you know, like, can I
But
help you with
when
anything?
it's busy,
No.
when it's busy, you don't want to just wait in the checkout lane to go ask them about this book.
True.
Because
That
you don't want to be that asshole
you didn't have to go back and then buy it
that
and then get back in the
decides
line
to come
again.
up and just ask out of the blue.
Yeah. So anyway, after an hour, I can't find the damn book there. I give up and I pull up the iPhone and I'm like, look, Barnes and Noble has it, $13. You know, it's 14 bucks, 13 bucks, whatever. Let's go over to Barnes and Noble and we'll get it. And I half knew going over there to expect more than 14 bucks when I walked in.
Yeah.
Okay. I was expecting like 15, 16, 18 bucks. Okay? Top end, 18 bucks. The fucking book was 26 bucks.
What?
Yes.
And it was hardcover. I was going to say, that's
It is a hardcover. It is a
so
hardcover. So, like, yeah, $26 is totally normal hardcover retail price.
Seems crazy.
But online, also, but it's hardcover of a book that was printed in 1949. I mean, for fuck's sake, come on.
That's a reprint, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
that's not. It's first edition, dude.
Right.
Yeah, that's
I
why.
didn't know what that had to do with anything. Like,
That's why it's in the collected works series. But yeah, he's dead now. So this is like his foundation. You know, the John Campbell Foundation, who make all the money off his shit. So anyway, the get to Barnes and Noble, and it's like 26 bucks. I can't do this. I want to read this book right now. I was willing to pay you like $6 more than online, plus, you know, our insane almost 10% tax rate, sales tax in Knoxville. I was willing to do all that just so I could read it now, just so I could say a few things. Because what I read online too is a lot of people read like the first 3 chapters of this book, because in the first 3 chapters he kind of outlines all the beats and what they mean, and then the rest of the book is like how he found those out, like his studies of all these works and all that. And they're like, yeah, a lot of people don't read the background because those are like the depth behind the points. Those are like, you know, all that. So it's like, yeah, I'm going to read the first story beats, but then I'll read the depth later. And so I can get to the first 3 chapters and be able to talk to all the phases, and that'll be a good podcast. But I can't do it, man. I can't fucking buy the book for 26 cents. And so I'm in there and, you know, go to Amazon. And it's cheaper on Amazon than it was on the Barnes & Noble site. It's like $13.30 versus $13.60, you know? And I'm an Amazon Prime member. So, no shipping, no tax, right? Fucking 2-day shipping, you know, be here Friday. Even though it was a holiday, still here Friday, 2-day shipping, Amazon, fucking awesome.
I'm not going to lie, I've gone into Best Buy just to, you know, and just ended up scanning stuff and putting them on my Amazon wish list to buy later.
I had already put it on my wish list, so I didn't need to scan to add it. I'd done that like when a lot of times when I watch Extra Credits, anytime they throw out a book, it goes right on the wish list.
Yeah.
But I couldn't do it, and then I tweeted. Basically, I'm at Barnes & Noble, not buying a book because it's 2 times more expensive than barnesandnoble.com. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And
I remember
I
seeing
CC the Barnes & Noble Twitter account. It's like BM Buzz or something stupid. And they replied back to me. They replied back, well, we get a better rate. You know, we can ship to you cheaper online than it costs in stores or something like that. And I was like, yeah, good luck with that. Because online, you can't hold a candle to Amazon. You know?
Amazon will beat you.
And the fact that they play this bullshit game, I'm like, you know what? Did you not just watch Borders go out? And you know, the fucking Barnes & Noble isn't even really a bookstore anymore. It's like a
coffee
toy
house.
It's like a toy and gadget store with a coffee house and books on the outskirts, right? And it's almost just like a library that you could like sit down and read a book. So most people were just like sitting in chairs, like reading shit they just grabbed off the shelf. Like there's all these gadgets. The big thing for the fucking Nook is, you know, right there. Oh wait, well there was one book in the center.
There was kind of funny, like
2,000 copies in the center on a pedestal of 50 Shades of Grey. Like, do you even fucking know what this is? Yes. Like, do you even know?
They did the exact same thing with Hunger Games and every other big
Hunger Games fine.
It's money. That's what it is.
Hunger Games fine. That's a real fucking book. This is some fanfic of some guy who wanted fucking Twilight sex. That's what 50 Shades of Grey is.
Not a guy.
Was it a woman? I don't care. There was somebody who... Have you seen the Gilbert Godfrey reading of 50 Shades of Grey?
I've only heard people talk about it, so like...
It's horrible. It's really like he put his fingers in my vagina and moved them. You know, I'm like, that's the level of writing. And
that almost sounds as good as when I was at SationCon, a bunch of people got together and did dramatic readings of bad fan fiction. And one
That's what it is. It is bad fan fiction.
He put his boy thingy in my you know what. That's
so they edited? They self-edited?
No, that was in that.
Oh, that was written?
Yes.
No, so that was that. No,
this was the worst fan
No holds barred in 50 Shades of Grey. You go on YouTube, you can find Gilbert Godfrey reading those passages, you know? And... like, it's done as like a spoof of an Audible commercial, or hell, maybe it is a real Audible commercial, you know? And there's like all these people listening to like Gilbert Godfrey's reading, like going, oh my god, oh, what? You know, and just like horror that listening to the different passages. And then the hilarious part is like at the end, this one woman is just like listening to it, she's like, that's so hot, you know? But yeah, it's like, come on, there was nothing better. Go drag up some Michael Crichton shit and just throw it back out there in the center.
Sell.
Maybe it wouldn't. I don't know.
It won't sell like that. It won't sell like the Flavor of the Month.
Like the when they take the Michael Crichton books and they put the cover on it from the movie, and then people think like the book was written off the movie instead of like it was a book first. And but yeah,
I never read any Michael Crichton, so
it's depressing. But you know what? I wish they're falling demise. I if I can't go in there and buy a book because I won't be willing to pay double.
Well, again, if you have a huge display in the middle of the store advertising the thing that is going to put your store out of business, i.e. the Nook.
Because I'm pretty certain they have never read any of the books that go on display.
What do you mean?
The person who is responsible for creating these displays has never read these.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they were on the internet and they're aware what that is. But yeah, so this book, though, actually isn't available, as, like, nobody's done an ebook of it. The Foundation or whatever, I guess, are being dicks or something about it, because that would have been my first preference, honestly. Because I actually do enjoy reading a book on the Kindle where I can highlight and save and make notes, especially a book like this that I'm going to come back to. Yeah. And I thought of, like, getting it from the library, but I'm like, you know what? I may actually... It always feels kind of weird, but I may just get over it and actually highlight this book. Because I do intend to come back to it and, like, take bits from it in a segment and, you know, a lot for our next game. I've already changed the storyline. Like, as I read about it, I'm like, oh, I get that. So... Here, the next podcast, or maybe podcast after that or something, we will break down the Monomyth and, you know, my thoughts on, like, game applying it to a game. But, yeah, especially, like, so I've been playing Mass Effect 3 finally, and, I mean, it's just straight ripped out of the Monomyth. Like, as I'm reading I'm like, man, those moments that, like, I talk about them, especially the first Mass Effect. And towards the end, there's a scene where you think Shepard's dead, right? Your character has died, and then is not. And like, look at the Monomyth, and it's like, yep, at the end, you gotta have the resurrection. And you gotta come back more powerful after it, you know? It's fucking Neo, and, you know, like, when Agent Smith kills him, and then it's actually in the Monomyth to have, like, the Deus Ex Machina, or whatever the hell you say that, Ghost in the Machine. It's in that to have, like, some supernatural power resurrect the hero. I always get pissed off at the screen at that point of, like, the Matrix is so steeped in believable fiction of, like, this is just a stone's throw away from reality, right? Like, if you can suspend disbelief in the artificial intelligence, all the rest of it stacks up. Like, this all, like, I don't have to buy a small little part of it. But then you get to the scene where, what's her name? Carrie Ann Fisher, Trinity. Where Trinity kisses Neo and like, brings him back to life. And I'm like, what? What the fuck is your kiss? Magic kiss? Fuck it. I'm flipping the table. I'm out. I'm done. Fuck you guys. You're done. Well, but then he comes back and he's more strong, and now he can take out the agents and all that. Like, that's in the Monomyth. That's part of...
That's kind of the point of the myth, though, is that you take this framework and then you adapt it to other things. So, in theory, I'm sure you could find a way to either adapt or downplay that, you know, the mystical aspects of that.
Well, and what I got... Like I said, this is originally not a prescription for how to write your movies, how to write your stuff. This is originally an analysis of myths and legends and religious texts of all the points in common, and oh, isn't that interesting? And that is important from some of the videos that I watched, because in the myth and the legend and the religious texts, they're trying to set up a power more powerful than us, right? That there is a God, there is a deity or a power that if you are the chosen one, the gods will help you in your time of need.
Right.
And so that got filtered down to the Matrix as like, oh, Trinity's love kept you alive. And it's like, that's why I want to read the whole book. Because it's like, no, you misinterpreted that part. We need to know that a God exists. Not that the power of love and Huey Lewis in the news is just back there, you know.
Well,
It's
then
like,
again, look at the context. Like, if The Matrix is not a movie that works. I don't think, like, if you suddenly, like, introduce some sort of religious context into it.
But I mean, that's why that scene doesn't work to me, because the point in the Monomyth of that scene is to convey the power of the deity. Right? That we're all trying to believe in. But in the Matrix, they're just fucking machines.
Well, yeah, but in a different culture, like, whatever, you know, Trinity, like, love or whatever, can kind of stand in for that same thing. But then again, like...
But that's what I mean, throughout the entire story of the Matrix, love is not this power. Love is not this force.
Love is not a capital L.
Right, so for it to come in that one moment is...
It's basically...
It's a fucking MacGuffin at that point.
Yeah, it's basically following the arc of the Monomyth, even when it... in a place where it would actually be smarter to
I'm just going to say, if you're going to wake somebody up, you got to fucking use tongue, alright?
I don't even remember that scene.
You don't? Like...
That's one of the few scenes I've actually seen.
Wait, was this in the first Matrix?
This is the first Matrix, and they're, like, hovering over the EMP, but if he can't, like... get out, they're gonna have to disconnect him or some shit, and then like they're like, we gotta pull him out, but he can't. If we don't pull him out now, you know, we gotta hit the MP or all the thing will take down the base or some shit, and they're all the little seekers are coming for him, and so they fucking like yank it out of his head, and then like, you know, I refuse.
Well, and
the Oracle told me I would fall in love with the one, and I love you.
They imply there is some sort of power, but that power is Neo being the one. Like, they never...
Well, when he comes back, he does line up with the more powerful, because then he's able to move in and out of the Matrix without having to have the whole head jack in thing.
Yeah. But like I said, I think that's a case where they may have... like you said, you found it frustrating because they straight followed the pattern of the Monomyth where they needed to reinterpret or, skew from it.
And that's the other common complaint, too, is that too many writers adhere to it too strictly. Of and this again, why I want to read the book. Of no, this was done for these less mentioned in text. It's not a prescription of how all movies and how all good stories are written. It's a good idea to build upon, but you should be free not only to skip some steps or reinterpret some steps, but change the direction of it, that would be the cliffhanger of oh shit, he didn't resurrect. He is dead, We were talking about anime on Twitter a while ago. John was ranting about, everybody lives now in anime and the new stuff. And it's one of the original things I loved about anime was anybody can fucking die.
Everyone dies.
Even if your name is in the title, that doesn't mean shit.
Yes.
You could be 2 episodes and your name's in the title.
How many times did Goku die?
Okay, that's...
no, I'm talking about good anime.
Bad example.
Yeah, I'm talking about good anime,
but
real
he still
anime.
died.
But they had this whole
I'm talking about
segment.
Cowboy Bebop level.
Yes.
Berserk is one of my all-time favorites. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have not. I saw the first few episodes and never finished it.
It gets weird. And then it gets normal, and then it gets fucking weird. And then it really gets fucking weird. And it's so far weird, I don't even... Is this the same show? Did I get the right... Can somebody check on this?
The intro was correct. Did somebody tape over the center?
Yeah.
I think part of it, too, is I think that's based on a manga, and it's gone further than the anime. So maybe they're...
Possibly, yeah.
Maybe it's...
but the idea is that...
in translation.
They were willing... Anime, a lot of the good classics that we talk about, deviated from the expected, and that's
Probably
what I
because
loved
they were coming
about
from
it.
an Eastern
Possibly.
culture as opposed to Western
Possibly,
culture.
but I don't know if there's any Eastern text to look at. There probably is some, but the fact that it sets you up to go in one direction and then abruptly shifts from where everywhere else would go is what made it interesting to me. Because then I felt I don't know what's coming next now. You've got me caring about these characters. But there is other things they explain in the Monomyth. I saw some people were breaking it down more deeply that I think is going to be valuable for me in the book of getting the magical item. Okay, there's always a magical item given to the hero. It could be Harry Potter's wand. It could be Luke and the lightsaber, right? There is something gifted to, it could be fucking Clash of the Titans and the sword and the shield, right? There's something given to the hero to once he's kind of accepted he's going forward to his journey of okay, you're gonna need this magical thing, and that coupled with the refusal of the call, so the hero has to be offered everything and go here and do the right thing, and he has to go no, I won't, Luke Skywalker basically I gotta go and fix the harvesters, alright, so I'm out of here, but then he can't return home. Oh, the aunt and uncle are burned corpses, right. I can never go home now, right? I must journey forward. So the fact that you're kind of given something, and the fact that you're forced into it and you don't want to, the hero, makes the hero relatable. He's not just this puppet figure who always does the right thing, who's unrelatable. There's these moments where you can reveal a human and make him relatable of if you were in a situation and you could be scared of the choices too, if you got the lightsaber, maybe you could be the Jedi, right? I can attach to this. So it's not all magical in this one guy. He is special, but we all could be special with a little help.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, there are different pieces that you can use in your story. I think the reason a lot of people use it, even when maybe they shouldn't, is because either because there's something about the myth that, it's why it's kind of come together like this, or we're just so used to it. It evokes an emotional reaction without having to do as much work as, say, coming up with your own outline or your own story arc, that people just, get lazy and follow it, even when it should be, like any good guideline, you learn the rules. And then once you learn the rules, you learn how to deviate.
And that's what I think for us would be a good thing of I'll go in and learn these rules, and then adhere to them pretty closely. And then once we kind of get comfortable, we could then play with variations.
Yeah.
You know, and then we can branch out.
It almost sounds...
But it's kind of relieving at a point, because it's like, okay, if we're going to write this narrative for this JRPG, which I've kind of flushed out, and I've borrowed a lot of elements from stories I've identified with, and now this will give me a good tapestry upon which to start placing these events and maybe space out, maybe create some other events in there. Now it doesn't feel such daunting as a task.
Well, what's crazy is you're talking about like all these different elements of the monomyth. It's kind of like what happens if you look at TV tropes. You know, a site like TV Tropes that catalogs all of these different concepts that people use in stories. You know, some people use it and don't know they're using it. Some people use it and play into it. Some people subvert it, you know, and you kind of have to identify what you're doing instead of just like...
Right, yeah, it's important to know the beats and the tropes so that you can either use it well, avoid it.
Understand why you're using it.
But yeah, it's like if you haven't spent time learning and identifying the tropes, then you're not gonna... You're going to use some of them unknowingly and not understand when you fail. Like, what's going wrong?
The Bechtel test is a good example of that. Like, this just feels natural because this is what I'm used to seing in movies and TV and stuff. So
not realizing,
why shouldn't I question it?
Yeah, not realizing, like, yeah, you're doing a trope and you've become predictable and expected. And, you know, I mean, if you want to be memorable, you got to do something unexpected. It only has to happen once, right?
Yeah.
It only has to be one good moment. But when that moment comes, if you've done it right, if you set it up right, if you set the emotional connections with the gamer, then you've got a game people will be talking about for years. And it could be a massively successful game, but it could also just be, you know, that touchstone game people go back to, like the original, like, System Shock. Not a lot of people played it, but just the creepy, in-space... AI controlling the ship you're trying to fight and get out with, but while you're conversing with it as well, you know? So, like, you're interacting with this insane AI on the ship, you know, that's basically HAL personified on the ship, you know, comes from System Shock. And that just kind of becomes a touchstone that Portal iterates on much later, and it's like, you know, it's like there's a lineage, you know, somebody, I don't know this is a fact, but I bet you somebody behind Portal is gonna, like, throw up, like, oh yeah, System Shock, love that fucking game, you know, I love the atmosphere. Definitely Dead Space.
Well, but honestly, I think you look at Portal because, yeah, like, you have the crazy AI, but I bet if you trace it back, it existed before System Shock, well, I mean, HAL. Yeah, it existed before System Shock.
It did.
But, you know, there are also different
they come into a game.
branches.
Like, I don't know...
development there.
There was definitely horror survival games before System Shock. I'm trying to think before System Shock, did we have a space setting done that way? I mean, System Shock's also kind of on the dawn of, like, figuring out 3D, too.
Yeah.
Where that really could become...
At least System Shock 2 was one of the first places I remember seeing, like, first-person shooter and RPG elements really...
Right, yeah. System Shock 2 definitely...
So again, like...
went that road. And I don't know if you know this or not. Have you played Dead Space? Did you play Dead Space?
No.
Dead Space started out as a System Shock 3.
Yeah.
And it basically was like, it's kind of an old property. We're kind of going in a different direction. We could just change these bits and make a new IP. And somebody in that moment said, let's make a new IP. But if you like the original System Shocks, you should play Dead Space.
Yeah, the studio had been shut down, because that was one of the reasons I played BioShock, because I think some of the people involved in System Shock were also involved in BioShock, and I was, you know, really interested to see what that would turn out like.
Alright, like I said, I've been playing lately Mass Effect 3, been kind of taking it slow. I haven't dived back into game code since Dreamville Play and all of that. Last week I was cramming for a presentation, and I need to kind of start getting my notes together, because on the 15th I give the first version of my keynote. That's not the keynote. That's not until like the end of July.
Yeah.
But the first version is coming up, and I got to kind of get that ahead and ready. And also, at some point, we got like Cicely's reunion.
Yep.
To go to.
Up in Boston.
With
several hundred
So I don't know that I'm going to dive into the game code yet. But I have been working on GameMarx.com, the new one. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about this in the past, but basically here shortly, I'm going to be sending out some emails, some like beta invites to developers to the new GameMarx. And GameMarx is going to try to do for developers what Xbox Indies did for the journalists. And kind of give a developer platform, sort of like what we did with XNA Last Dance, but not that kind of like cell phone. This is basically going to be more like a games press for indies, is what we're going with that. So making it easier to contact. And we'll see how that goes. We'll see if developers find this to be interesting and all that. But yeah, so I've been customizing WordPress because we're going to move it back to a WordPress system instead of custom code as it all is now. And just kind of dial down our dependency on Azure for one more site. Xbox Indies will probably stay in Azure for a little while longer. Yeah. We got to basically, we've been in Azure for a year now, I think. So we've got 2 more years of free Azure. And then we kind of got to figure out what we're doing. You know, we're going to keep it in Azure. We pull it back to WordPress or something, you know, it's a lot cheaper, but we also got to see what Indies looks like in 2 years.
Yeah, because it may be worth shutting it down, even if it's not completely gone. Just depending on what the level of support is. Well, really what it'll depend on is, like, what's the level of journalism? Like, if nobody's posting anymore,
then it may dial back into something else. And we may, you know, transition it back to WordPress, which it was originally when Nick Gravlin did it. It was a WordPress site. And I think I have his code still laying around, so I could, you know, map those things back in. But anything significant that you've been? I know you started working on. I've seen the ads and stuff. You went back into game code.
Yeah.
I'll probably let you stay on the game code and maybe just add some thoughts or things down there so you can work on something. And I know you were going to work on the Funkworks site, and maybe I'll just go ahead and migrate that stuff over while I'm doing the rest.
If you want, because you probably know how the Funkworks site needs to be laid out. So I don't know. Like, I'm just going to be guessing at that point. I do still have the code I was looking at for moving GameMarx into WordPress that I probably need to send you. Yeah,
you like had the import code for that kind of stuff. So yeah, at some point I'll probably need that. Maybe I modify it or something. Like I might create a custom post type for the reviews and do something like that. And take advantage of the WordPress post types for templating.
Yeah.
But then again, I may not. We actually, the template that I bought is called Conduit on ThemeForest, and it actually has a review template part built into it with actually like box art, cover art, and things like that set up. So I may look into how it's working, and maybe I just kind of map our data into its data and see how that goes.
It's not something we'll have to keep supporting because we're not writing reviews. So.
Right, we're not writing reviews anymore, so we're basically just going to keep an online archive. And if I get the Xbox Indie site updated so that journalists can go into a game page and put links to their reviews from the game page, so that if you go look at I Made Game Zombies, there's the Xbox Live, there's the GameMarx review, there's the Indie Gamer Chicks review, things like that. So that might still come out. I think I'm going to scrap the idea of a Metacritic system on there, simply because most games are not going to have the critical mass you need for that kind of scoring to work. You know, if it only has like 3 reviews, then 1 review will massively skew it. And
if it has no reviews, then
yeah, or if it gets like 1 or 2, what do you do? And you know, if we try to wait for like 5, you know, because like Metacritic will wait for like 10 or something. We're never going to get 10 reviews on a game. I think the effort there would be better spent in user reviews. But you know, I don't know. We'll deal with that as it is. So that may come in the next few weeks or so as I roll along. The theme developer has been great. I've been emailing him back and forth of little things and stuff like that, and he's done a really great job at this WordPress theme. So I got to ask some questions at our WordPress meetup next week. Make sure I go in the right direction with these things. But expect that in the next week. Expect a new revamped GameMarx beta invites in the next week or so to start happening. News. So you and I were talking about this a little bit before the show, but basically this guy went in and he spent 350 hours playing Diablo 3, right? And he's played it all the way through and all the difficulty levels and all the characters and seen all the dungeons and grabbed a bunch of items and all that. And he's complaining in the forums basically that he's bored. And it just started this whole thread of people of like, yeah, this is kind of boring and Diablo hasn't provided us enough content, you know, and I've played and beaten the game like 2 or 3 times, but now I don't know, it's up for a 4th time through, and it's like, wow, people, just, what do you expect for $60? Like, Blizzard at least came in the
Maybe you
forum.
expect World of Warcraft.
Yeah, Blizzard came in the forum and actually said, you know, we can't do World of Warcraft for Diablo 3. But they were actually like saying like, hey, we're going to do all these content packs and we're doing this stuff to address this issues. Like they were kind of cool with it. But at least they came in and like kind of around thing like called it. Kyle Orland on ours, Opposable Thumbs, basically said like, yeah, I'm not going to be that nice. Fucking entitlement culture has gone insane if you think 6 cents an hour
You kind of want to say something like, back in my day, if I said I was bored, you know...
My mom would toss me at my ass outside.
Yes.
Play with a stick.
I almost... Maybe it's a sign of getting older, but man, I almost don't want, like, 120-hour games.
Yeah, like, I don't... I want to spend that 350 hours doing other things.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of liked...
Being well-rounded.
Bastion felt like a good pace of, like, it's about a week.
I'm getting back into Skyrim, and I am going through and actually trying to level up my character since I maxed out several of my skill trees, or not skill trees, but skill points. And, like, I'm kind of scared, like, you know, I don't want to dump that much time into it. It's really enjoyable, it's totally worth it, but you come out after a game like that and you just feel like you've wasted...
life.
Yes. Like, there has to be a kind of moderation there. 350 hours. Like,
yeah.
What the hell?
That's the other thing. It's like, if you got 350 hours to devote to a game...
Make one.
Do something else, man. Like, you need to get a better hobby or something.
Or other hobbies. You can have more than one.
Yeah,
it is possible.
Definitely. You know, play some other games. Check out some indies. It's insane.
I don't know, if he's playing 350 hours, he may already be doing that. I'm just saying.
Possible. Yeah, so, you know, so the thing is with indies, of like, it's back to that, like, dollar value proposition, and I just think you're going into it wrong, man. You know, like, I don't think you should say, like, this is a $60 game, and should have X amount of hours to play, and a $5 game should have this many hours. Like, no, man, like, if it's a cool, like, 2 hours, and I paid $10 for 2 hours. So fuck what? You know? Like, at some point, like, these guys gotta eat. And if it's a cool damn game, like, there's some PSN games I need to go in and check out, like Journey. And I don't think Journey's that long, right? And it's gonna be like $10-15 or something to play Journey. But, like, I need to go play that, and if it's this cool little experience that everybody says it is, then it's worth it. If you had a good time, it was great. You know, it's like, look, the Avengers and fucking Ice Age 17 or whatever they're doing, both cost the same. You know, they're both the same length and they cost the same. Or you know what? Cars 2. Ice Age 3 or whatever hasn't come out yet, or 4, whatever they're on. Cars 2, that sucked balls, cost as much to go see as Wall-E and Up. Right? So, this whole, like, length thing is not a good way to judge the value of your money. And you should judge your money, basically, A, by kind of waiting on reviews from people you know and people you don't. Like, people who do reviews, and then, you know, just like Twitter and internet and things like that. You shouldn't rush out to buy a game day one, kind of, you know, held off on that. And then, you know, make your decision then.
To be fair, if he's this kind of person, gamer, probably doesn't need to wait for a review, because if what's the review going to say? At 350 hours, it was too short.
Yeah, that's true.
Like he's grading on a different scale, and
here's something interesting. Xbox co-creator is backing this $99 hackable console. Also on this person is the guy who was designing parts of the one laptop per child project. So basically, they're trying to create this open console for $99. You could go buy this console, and people could download and run games. It's Android-based or something, and they're working at it. Unfortunately, and I don't know if this is just like, if they're trying to go like, Android or something like that, but they're like, all the games will be free to play.
Wait, what?
Oh,
exactly. It's like, yeah, so it'll be a whole bunch of shit Zynga games trying to like nag you for well, if you can't even upsell, it won't even be shit Zynga games. Like,
yeah,
it'll be fucking MAME clones. Like, you just want a MAME emulator, dude. That's what you want. You can go get that now, alright? There's tons of sites to go build a MAME emulator. Nobody's going to invest money in developing games for this console.
Well, to be fair, I wonder if there's a reason they took that approach. One, if it's an open hackable console,
I get to say, like, hey,
philosophically
it's
speaking,
an open hackable console, so the games are going to have to ship DRM free. But there's already sites that sell games DRM free anyway.
But also, I think the type of people who are going to build a console like that, or even the market for a console like that, is not really going to support a large marketplace.
Yeah, it's not going to be very large at that. So
I mean, it's not worth it. It's probably not worth it for them to.
Yeah, James called it. Yeah, Mad Ninja Skills. Marketplace will be Tux Racer.
Yep.
And if you know what that is, then you've installed Linux before. This is kind of crazy. South Korea banned virtual item trade. And there's some crazy ass fines on that too. Like if you're trading virtual items, 28,000 pounds. I don't know what that is in real money, but
is it English pounds?
Yeah, it looks like it's got the little.
Dear Lord.
Looks like that's what that they're going for. And 5 years imprisonment. And the main purpose of the games is for entertainment and should be used for academic and other purposes. So, basically, these virtual items, people buying virtual gold and all of that, they're just codifying in law. And it seems really weird, given that they're very big Blizzard fans, right?
Yeah.
Korea is very much behind Blizzard, and everything Blizzard does, they love. And they're getting ready to open this real money auction house for Diablo 3. So this doesn't strike me as something that Blizzard would be pushing for.
No.
Given that they're like going to experiment with this whole $43,000 is 28,000 pounds. So they're and that was credit to Smiler2 in chat.
Still a lot of money.
But it just seems crazy because it's like this is going to be hardcore capitalist Mike, right?
Right.
I guess they're coming at it saying like these things have no value because they're virtual. But that's bullshit, because Hardcore Capitalist Mike is going, if somebody's willing to pay for it, it has value.
The more you pay, the more it's worth.
Exactly. Like, if it wasn't worth anything, nobody would be buying it. But it is worth something because people are buying it, people are paying for it. I understand the complaints, and that's why Blizzard is trying to kind of like work it into their games rather than work against it, and we're evolving and we're growing. But then it's like, where does Farmville come down on this?
Yeah, and it may be angled at something more like Farm. Well, no, Farmville doesn't actually let you trade with other players.
I don't know that it does, but so, yeah. I can't say that it doesn't.
Not that wouldn't be
you don't
a
trade
next
with
step.
Other players. You give them stuff as friends.
But there could be money exchanged hands for
probably in real life, or if you
but that would be like
bank to bank, and that's
and that
third
would
party.
get you 5 years in prison and $48,000 fine.
Well, I kind of wonder, there are a lot of angles you could, I understand, like, your position on it. I think there are different angles you could come at it as, like, hey, we don't want our kids to waste money. Like, I could see this being a position that people who don't really
But it
understand
just
the
seemed like a
industry-
crazy response to... I expect to read the next few days, this gets struck down. This gets,
Very
rule no
likely,
return, because it
but-
seems pretty broad.
It could also be like even if these things have worth because someone is willing to pay something for them today, that doesn't mean they will in the future. Like maybe it's a fear of some sort of bubble, financial,
Possibly.
not necessarily like huge economy-wide bubble, but
Yeah,
just-
I don't know. Whatever the motivation, definitely the actions is excessive. I love this title. Journey Dev goes independent with $5 million in funding. So basically, the guys who did Journey, they also did Flow and Flower, which have been the best-selling PSN titles. They were under Sony for a 3-title exclusive, and they kind of delivered 3 good titles exclusively. Now they're gonna like branch out, do other platforms, and kind of go on there. And they had these rounds of funding, and they got some financial supporters, so they raised like $5 million in seed money, so they could be independent, and all that. And I'm like, no, you don't have a publisher to dictate what you do in your game, but you have something called shareholders. And they can be as bad, if not worse. So just the whole thing where they're like talking of like, the intent of the investment is to provide resources for TGC to remain independent so they can innovate with complete autonomy from the pressures of platforms and publishers. I'm like, no, in a year, your backer's going to be in like, okay, where you at? Show us. What do you got going? If you've somehow managed to raise $5 million and maintain 51% of voting interest in your company, fucking congratulations, man. You did amazing. But something tells me that you don't have as much control in your company anymore if you're going to raise that money.
Well, it's like we said in the past, like the definition of indie is very broad and it depends on who you ask and what elements you're focusing on.
It is. And I think you can't really define it. Like, I would still call them independent.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly are in a sense, and in theory, because of the nature of the games they've made, they could be finding shareholders who aren't going to micromanage the company, but...
So, I mean, I hope to have those problems one day, but we talked a little bit about this before the show. Mass Effect 3 ending complaints rejected by the ASA. And this basically... is the equivalent of an FTC to the U.S. Basically, it's a board that would regulate in the European Union that would regulate false advertisement claims and things like that. And so a whole bunch of gamers got together and they bitched that Mass Effect promised me I would control my own ending and I didn't control my own ending and they misled me and all that shit. And I love the response was basically like, we looked into it and it's a fucking game and you knew what you were buying. Like, there's no misleading here whatsoever. Like, within the realm of, like, what a game can allow you to do, totally allows you to do, this you should have known. We played it, and we even felt the endings, 3 ending choices or whatever you had, were varied enough, and your player choices did dictate that. So, I just thought it was kind of cool that, like, a government agency actually got it for once. Of, like, no... These are games, Games can only allow you to do so much. It cannot be completely wild, open-ended. If that's what you need, you have to write your own game. There's no other way to do that. And that, not strike down a publisher because they said, like, you will be able to craft your own story in the game. Could you imagine that? If saying, like, create your own story was, like, false advertising for a game?
Yeah, because then... I mean, there are games that are more varied and have multiple endings and things like that actually do offer something of that experience, but you couldn't describe it as such. I don't know. That I can't ever see something like that getting to that point, just because, like we said with the Diablo thing, it is a kind of an entitlement culture. Sort
Yeah,
of
yeah. This basically
thing.
definitely goes to that same. All right. I got a Zynga article after this that'll tie in great, but Peter Molyneux testing the morality of monetization. We haven't talked about Curiosity yet on the podcast. You know what Curiosity is? It's like the first game that Peter's doing in his new 22 Can studio. So it's basically a giant cube in cyberspace on the internet. Everybody takes a pick hammer and like mines a piece of the cube. And one hit for somebody somewhere will basically like lotto win and find out what's inside the cube. And total Peter Molyneux fashion, he's like, and it will be amazing and awesome and wonderful. But here's the catch. Only the person who hits that final blow will be revealed to what's in the cube.
No one else will know.
No one else will know. Peter's basically saying, like, I'm just kind of experimenting on monetization of games and social networking after the game. Like, how will that person reveal what they learned?
So this has a time limit on it.
Well, I mean, it kind of has an intrinsic time limit because however long it takes for people to finally take however many clicks are programmed in the machine. But I don't know if there's a free tier. I don't know if there's like here's your free pickaxe and you just do one hit, right? But there will be like a, I think it was $20,000 up to, no, 50 pounds. So again, in real money, that's probably like shitloads. That's probably like $100,000 or so.
50 pounds or 50,000 pounds?
50,000 pounds.
Yeah, that's like 100,000 pounds.
$100,000 or greater. Maybe 200,000. I don't know. Lots of shit money. You can buy a diamond chisel, which is basically equivalent. I thought somewhere I read that was worth like 20,000 strikes in one strike or something. Somewhere. Anyway, like, I don't think the game's out, but when the game's out, it'll be out there. So you'll be able to buy these better chisels. Like, there'll be price range all the way up to this diamond chisel.
I'm assuming there's more you can do in the game besides just...
You fucking chip away at the cube. It's part of, like 22 cans is part of, like, 22 experiments. There's gonna be 22 little, like, games like this. Because he's Peter fucking Molyneux, and that's what he does. And now that he's left Lionhead, and he's on his own again, there's no constraints, man. Like,
do crazy.
He has left. He literally has left the reservation.
It's an interesting concept. I mean, you need stuff like this to kind of push the
pound is not worth
envelope,
as much as it used to be. 77,000 pounds.
So I'm kind of curious. Like, he's kind of curious of like, are people gonna fucking just give you money to click a thing?
It's the internet. It's by a famous guy, yes.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's what we're at. Is somebody going to pay $100,000 to take a swipe at this cube just to be the odds that you get to know but no one else will know? And, like, really, what could be so fucking awesome? Like, it's just going to be information, you know?
Gaming for the 1%.
It's not like, yes, it is. It's not like it's going to be, like, a year's supply of horrors, you know? I mean... It's not going to be something unattainable through other means.
Right. ED comes out of the screen and gives you a blowjob.
And at some point, like...
Who?
The Mass Effect ship AI. But
okay.
The information is going to have no value once it's out either. Right? So, like, if you paid all the money to have that information, it's only valuable such that you don't tell anyone. Because as soon as you tell someone, they tell someone else, it's done.
Well, and it depends, because the other side of the coin is you may want, people may invest in this just because they want that information to be free. They don't want that constraint put on it. I don't know.
Do you see Kickstarters to, like, let us buy as many diamond chisels as we can and we'll make sure the information is free to all? Yeah,
but at this point, it ceases to become a gaming experiment and it becomes more of a social networking experiment. Like, the game element is
He did say that.
So
Molyneux has said that. This is a social networking experiment once the cube has been opened.
If you look at it that way, knowing that, yes, people will do this, yeah, it's really freaking interesting.
No matter what happens, Molyneux wins, I think.
Yes.
Because even if it's not super awesome, it's super awesome that it worked.
So he's going to do 22 more games, or 21 more games like this.
I think so. I think that's the plan.
Do we want to start a pool as to how many games it takes him to go from this point to full-on supervillainy?
He's there now. I'm
Of just
certain.
like, send me money.
Not quite, but like where he goes finally off the deep end.
I'm in the beta.
Hubris, of what? Of curiosity?
No, it's the least I could do comic.
Yeah.
Oh,
Something no one
yes.
will get.
No, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but that's it's crazy. I don't think it's up yet. I went looking for it. It doesn't look like it's out. I don't know what development does this need to have. I mean, seriously. But yeah, I don't know. Peter Molyneux being Peter Molyneux. Peter Molyneux doing what Peter Molyneux does. And sometimes you get populous, and sometimes you get black and white. So...
And the thing is, sometimes you get an experiment that will probably... Like, you won't want to know the results of this experiment, because...
It will depress you.
It will depress you.
Well, the other thing is if there's any kind of indication of size of the cube to the players, like when that thing starts getting small, will there be a
People will
panic
know.
buying frenzy of like, $10 to take a swing? Fuck that. Oh shit, it's down to like 300 swings left. Wait, let me get, That's crazy. So, I told you that a Zynga article, because we were talking about this monetization thing. It basically is like, Zynga's stock is now sub $5. The collapse of the Facebook IPO, a new report come out and basically said they're in a tailspin. I think that's what the platform and API thing we talked about the other day was like anything and everything to appease investors. I think it's going to be ironic that they're going to be undone by their own hubris, by their own like going up and going IPO and all that. You should have just stayed private.
Well, the question is...
Continued to make your Farmville ripoffs and make insane money off of that, because I think that will continue to work for years to come.
They'll still be making insane money. It just won't be as
stock market insane
yeah.
money, and it won't be growth that investors want. So, yeah. Next article is probably Zynga threatened by NASDAQ for delisting. When you start trading sub $1, NASDAQ starts saying we won't list you on the stock exchange. Like, you're still a public company, and people still buy and sell stocks. You just aren't listed. You just have to kind of call around and find somebody willing, brokers that do trades off market at that level. So, which kills any ability for your stock to be worth anything. But finally, one more Peter Molyneux article. And this is something we talked about, and we didn't do it at Captain Dubstep yet, but we are going to do it for Captain Dubstep. Peter Molyneux basically said that the game industry celebrities are suppressed by publishers. So we might have talked about this a little bit when Tim Schafer was talking about it on one of the Double Fine videos for the Adventure Kickstarter. But essentially, at one time, like, Tim Schafer was like, people know our names because we just put our name in the box. We just acted big before we were. Ron Gilbert and Tim Schafer put their names on the box. And then people knew this was a Tim Schafer game. This was a Ron Gilbert game. And then later that paid off because wherever they worked, whatever studio they were doing, whatever project they were at, they have a following. And Peter Molyneux is basically like, publishers kind of prevent that from happening right now. They put the game studio and all that up front, but you don't know who the real idea man behind the game was, right? There's director and producers, but it's sometimes hard to know, like, who is the Kojima behind, this, like he is for Metal Gear, right? So, I mean, if Kojima left and did something somewhere else,
You would know.
people would follow Kojima. It's like, oh man, what is he going to do? In fact, he did leave, didn't he? Yeah?
Yeah, I think you did.
So, Miyamoto, from Nintendo. And it's like, basically, developers need to be out there with their names. Not so much their companies, but their names so that people can build a following. And we talked about this a little bit. We had a discussion to go ahead and agree upon. When we do games, whoever is kind of the creative director of the game we will just at some point, it'll be a Funkworks game and Funkworks and all the credits on there, but at some point, probably on the start screen, it'll just say, like for Captain Dubstep down there, it'll just say a Michael Neal game. And then as we do this over time, our names will have branding behind them so that if at some point we're no longer Funkworks because we got chewed up and spit out and we were successful and all of that, when we go on and do something, it'll be like, oh, it's Michael Neal and Dylan Wolf. Yeah, these are the guys, I love their games. I followed them, from that. And I think it's really important for indie developers. It's sometimes hard to do because you want to, like, not feel like you take center stage and you take the spotlight.
Yeah, and it also it could look presumptuous. It depends on how it's received by the it depends on how you do it and how it's received, I guess.
Smolaching pointed out, and this is true, Activision was created basically because Atari wouldn't allow writers credit. Like, that's why there are kill screens with gamer initials in them on Atari games. That was the only way they could get their name on the game. Atari was very big about, no, it's an Atari game, it's made by Atari.
Right.
And in those days, it literally was one guy a lot of the time, So
I remember a lot of Activision games would be like, I want to say David Crane, the guy who did A Boy and His Blob.
Yeah. And that's kind of what Activision got going of, like, yeah, screw Atari, we're going to be Activision. And of course, Atari didn't know about, like, licensing games for your console. So, like, anybody could go and make cartridges for the Atari system.
Yeah.
And that got out of control. But, yeah, Andy Crane, that smaller team backed that up. So, I think that's important. Molyneux, had that article, and I've started pointing out again of like, yeah, that's really important. Make sure people know who your name is because that's one thing that will stick with you and build you a following and allow you to go do crazy things like Peter Molyneux does. Because everybody knows, like, he's the populist guy and, he did these other games that you like, or Will Wright did, The Sims, who's I getting ready to say? You're going to say the Civilization. Sid Meier. Sid Meier did the Civilization games. Like, if Sid Meier goes out and does something, and it's called Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri, people are like, holy shit, that's Sid Meier. This is spiritually, the successor to Civilization, even though he doesn't do Civilization anymore, right? So that will give you, you can do crazy stuff. If you want to, like, make a fucking cube that people pay you money to take a swipe at, It's like, hey, you've set yourself up as a designer. We have a few. We have, like, Cliff Basinski, Gears of War, he's tied in with that. I don't know their names, man. I'm trying to think of their names. The Affinity Ward guys.
The Doctors?
No, not the Doctors, that's BioWare.
Okay.
I hadn't even heard that name, the Doctors.
The Doctors?
No,
they're both medical doctors.
They're actual PhDs.
Yeah. They were doing medical software before they did games. So yeah, they could do like open heart surgery on you. I don't know what they did, but, for the doctoral, but they are like PhD doctors and yeah, they're called the Doctors a lot. But, even like names and teams, there was, he cited one, Bitmap Brothers. That didn't mean anything to me. But maybe if I went back and Googled them real quick and their games would come up, I'd know who the Bitmap Brothers were. And like, oh, okay, these stuff. And if they show up on Kickstarter as like, hey, we're the Bitmap Brothers who did this and this, oh, okay,
Yeah,
so that is kind of important. Speaking of Kickstarters, let's kick off the Kickstarters. So the first one to talk about this week, you kind of sent over to me before I'd even reviewed it.
Because I'd seen some discussion about this on Twitter.
Yeah, it's called Dive Kick, and there are 2 buttons, right?
Yes. Dive.
And kick, right? Or no, is it 1 button?
No, it's 2 buttons. Dive and kick.
1 jump, then kick?
Yes, and all attacks deal maximum damage.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's 1 button, maybe.
It's basically...
No, 2 buttons. Okay, 2 buttons.
It's basically the fighting game equivalent of a forced scroller.
Yeah. It's up to $12,000 now. Like, it's getting backed. Apparently they showed this off at,
I think it It was kind of a joke. I mean,
A joke, yeah, at a conference, and everybody's like, "Oh, you should make this game. I'll pay so much money to this game and all that." And I think they're almost out calling out the bluff of the internet. Because, like, all these guys are like, "Oh, this is totally the best game fucking ever, man. This is games should, all the modern games could learn so much from this game. This is the best of show of E3 or whatever and all that." And they're like, I think the Kickstarter is like, because they're trying to raise $30,000.
Yeah.
And it's done.
Well,
it's like,
they had, like I said, they had a version that they had at this one fighting game tournament, but this, I don't know, because I had a discussion, because someone I follow on Twitter was saying, like, for $30,000, I don't see how they can do this. And my response was,
$30,000, what are you spending the money on?
Apparently, it's licensing for software, like Photoshop and whatever else. It's legal fees.
So here's the add-on, like $40,000 for multiplayer, right?
Yeah.
$50,000 additional characters in story mode. So that's not in the $30,000 version that they're going for.
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't need $30,000 to put this game out.
No, and one of the other things they were looking at was like QA for being able to release it on Steam or other services like that. I get the feeling that either they're not experienced game developers or they're using some sort of weird platform that is not going to make it easy to distribute.
I think they're calling the internet's bluff of like, look, you guys are all like, "Oh, we're going to pay so much money on this. We're going to kickstart this instead of actually put it up there for sale and watch nobody buy it." Because at the end of the day, it's a joke game.
I don't know, did you see? Because I pointed out, like, well, when someone said, the guy I was talking to was talking about how, a lot of people will get eaten up with fees and taxes and reward costs. And I'm like, well, it depends. Like, their rewards seem pretty sane. And he goes, yeah, but have you seen how many T-shirts people have, like...
That's true.
A lot of people wanted
they were
T-shirt.
They were doing T-shirts at a pretty low pledge level.
And there were a lot of them, comparatively speaking.
They were doing T-shirts at the $50 level. And add $10 for international shipping. So they're missing both of those right now. $10 is not enough for international shipping. This was the Wasteland guys. Somebody did this on their blog, and or it might have been the Banner Saga. I think it was a Banner Saga of like $10 extra is not enough for international shipping. You will lose on that one, and $25 level, man. 25 to 30 bucks are going to be wrapped up in the shirt production and getting that out.
The $50 level.
Or the $50 level, yeah. The $50 level for the T-shirt. So, like, by the time you ship that and get that out the door and all that, you spent $30 a shirt. Easily, that can add up on a small shirt run. Cost of printing shirts and getting them shipped to you and then getting them shipped from you and all of that. And, something like, they've got 104 backers at the shirt level, but like the guys at the Banner Saga were like, you can't pick up the phone and call the post office and say like, I need to ship 4,000 posters. Post office goes, yeah, good luck with that. You have to call up FedEx and arrange for a truck to come to your house, and like you're gonna do big time shipping. You're gonna do big time rates. Yeah, so that's what that guy was like concerned about, and you were talking about. Next one I got up is ARK. A dark acid adventure comedy, and this is a point-and-click adventure game. I think it just launched like today or so. I don't think it's been up that long. I think it should have more funding than it does. Other than the excessive boobs, right? It seems like they've got a pretty good style going to their artwork for kind of a 3D point-and-click adventure, third-person perspective. On that, they show a lot of gameplay, and they do talk some about the story on there. It'd be cool if, since they're this good at it, if they would have produced like a trailer or something. But to just sweeten the deal, just kind of sell it home. But it seems like it should be a pretty good game. I would be surprised. Now, the one thing is that they're asking for $150,000, so they're asking for like real game studio level money.
150? Wow.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing of like, that's going to be a tough raise on the site, even for game projects. I mean, yeah, that's probably what you're going to need to spend to do everything you want to do, but you probably should have figured out some stretch goals or figured out ways to come up with funding outside of, continue taking pre-orders or something like that. Hitting 150, I think, is going to be difficult on that. But otherwise than that, it looks like it could be a point-and-click adventure, possibly maybe some humor involved, and a lot of 3D breasts. To make clear from the video. Next one...
That's how they're getting their funding.
I think so. I think that's what they're relying on, which actually may backfire. Like the one that I told you, I think we were talking about, that was real creepy, that people backlashed against and all that, and they went and put clothes on that. I don't think that ended up doing. There was something else I saw that we had covered. It didn't end up getting funded. And it had a lot of just hey, look at the busty 3D chicks in the video. I don't know, it's hitting a chord of people don't want to, maybe they'll play that, or maybe they'll watch video of that or something like that, but then the idea of I'm funding you to create that, I don't want to... Putting your
name on it.
Yeah, it's I don't want to put my name on it, I don't really want to, encourage that. It's, I don't know, I wish there was an easier way for me to compile stats on that, but, next one up, Moon Intern. This is an ambitious little project. I mean, it's like this 2D platformer, right? But you're running all these quests. Now, in the video, I don't know if you're just seeing static screens he's mocked up, or if he has gameplay done. That's the question I kind of have here. And it's kind of a subtle question, or subtle to notice when you watch the game play moment, or what could be gameplay, because they look like, let me see if I can find some more moments here. They look like, as they're scrolling around, these could be in the game, things are happening, but then again, as I see the same scene shown over and over again, I'm like, you've just got some sketches and things like that going. You don't actually have gameplay up and going here. I think in the opening, do they have some more? See if I can jump ahead. So, what is ambitious besides platforming is that you could come in and go to the main moon base and pay your rent, and then to get money for your rent, you could take different quests from the people walking around, and they could have you go kill monsters, or they could have you go, dig craters in the moon or something like that. So when they started talking about it, I was like, first it was okay, it's kind of retro, I get the retro vibe going, but they did have some plans that make it interesting, and I'd be curious to see. It's got $5,000 pretty strong out of the gate launch, so maybe it'll hit its $30,000 that they're asking for. The next one looks like a very creative adventure game. Looks like it should do well, but it has, these guys do start talking at the beginning, but they do quickly get into a gameplay trailer here. They have a really nice animated style, they have nice artwork, good voice acting going, but iOS and Android. So, those traditionally have not done that well. Those have been hard to fundraise for on, Kickstarter. And I think that is because, when you do an iOS game, or an Android game, you've limited the audience. Everybody that comes to Kickstarter has a PC. And then you call out people who come to Kickstarter, it's oh, I don't have a tablet, so I can't play your game. Also, it's I'm not sure you're going to be able to get me the game on my tablet because, Apple has rules, and some people have done these weird things where they release two versions of the game. One is free, private or something that they give to the backers, or the backers can play with a code they enter, and then there's the sell version or something. But that kind of has to be done, I think, with Apple in advance. I don't think you can just guarantee that if you're successfully funded your game. So there's that whole thing of I may back this and then still might have to buy the game or something. So, and then again, it's kind of like, if you're going to be a platform game, then you'll probably be like a few bucks on the game, and I'll just pick it up for $2 or $3 when you're on iOS, because that's what they go for. So, if you've been watching the video, you see like, hey, this actually looks to be pretty good, adventure gaming. And in the little bit here where he's like dragging the things like, how am I, something, how am I, or something like that, he like voices that, and then had like cool little comments, like the one where like, that little girl is too stupid for my Bill to be so smart, and then at the end of it, he's like, and that makes no sense whatsoever, with it. So, it could be good, but I don't know. Again,
we shall see.
Yeah. Put out a PC version. It should not be that hard. Like if they're using Unity or something under the hood, PC version. Click and point adventure. There's no reason it can't do that. The last one I have up, Koigi Combat, the ultimate giant monster fighting game. I would not have put up here if it wasn't for a slow week, because he wants like $350,000, which good fucking lord, get
Kaiju Combat.
So apparently this guy's like, I've worked on a lot of major titles, and then he goes on to list like major titles. Let's see when he starts showing them up here. Rampage, but like the box art for Rampage that comes up isn't like the classic arcade Rampage. It's the Wii port of Rampage, and it's the Wii port of Tony Hawk, and it's the Wii port of Tomb Raider, and it's PC Prince of Persia. So it's like, okay, you've worked on a lot of ports of stuff, but I guess he did this game that he lays a lot of credit to called,
Kaiju Combat.
Dino something, wait, what is it here? Godzilla. So basically the Xbox, PlayStation 2, and Wii Godzilla games, I guess, are his. And he's like, hey, everybody's loved my Godzilla games, and they're always like, hey, will you make another Godzilla game? Because we love the Godzilla games, because, yeah, they were gimmicky, but, because they were Godzilla, but they were also really good fighting games. Now, unfortunately, he's got some model rendering stuff down here, going on, but no gameplay videos. Just like, hey, I'm a member of the team, and here's a 3D model still shot that we took. So no gameplay. I don't know. If you knew these games, if the Godzilla games resonated with you, maybe this guy will mean something to me, mean something to you, but he didn't mean much to me, and if it wasn't for a slow Kickstarter week with the holiday and everything, I probably wouldn't have put him up. Probably would have been a project that I passed on. But that does wrap up our Kickstarters for this week. I am working on something to make this a more formal segment and maybe even spin it out as its own video and get that up. So as soon as I have my studio, as soon as I not that this isn't Funkworks Studios here.
Right.
This will be Funkworks Studios A, and we get Funkworks Studio B up and running. I'll probably produce these a little separately. I don't know how we'll probably still discuss them in the podcast like we always do, but there'll be something else separate up on YouTube, and then some other content I know I want to get up and going. I will put up as well when we get to the other studio. Look for the site updates for GameMarx. If you're already on XNA Last Dance, you'll be contacted. If you're not, go ahead and register on XNA Last Dance. That'll kind of be the mailing list for the beta invites. To kind of kick the tires and make sure everything's going on, and basically be the seed developers if and when the site launches. So it may not go out this week. It may be another week. I don't know. I'm going to try to really hard get that point to a site where it's ready to test the developer aspects. Maybe not have our import of our historical stuff yet, but that can come later. So with that, I think that ends the podcast for the week. So thank you everyone for tuning into the live broadcast. Thank you everyone who watches on YouTube and everyone who downloads the audio video. This week we should have some very interesting outtakes. So stick around for that.